the next interview that will follow just in a second is an extraordinary one. We won't stay here in this room together. No, we will enter the Metaverse together. And for this special interview, we invited Ian Epstein from Republic, who will be interviewed, and the interviewer will be David Granite. He's Creative Technologies at Dorier Group. And short information for all of you, because of technical reasons, we recorded the interview in advance, but the Q&A session will be live here on stage. So have fun in the Metaverse.
Welcome everybody to the ITU, HTC and Dorier Metaverse, where we will host our Metaverse interview of my friend Ian Epstein, who works for Republic.com, and with whom we're going to cover the new upcoming trends, the differences between America and Europe, and how can a platform such as Republic.com can enable Swiss entrepreneurs to attract more capital and gain bigger value. I am super excited to host this, and I would like to thank Zurich Startup Nights for letting us produce this. We'll have a Q&A session after this recording, and we'll have Ian directly answering your questions after this top-down 15 minutes format. Let's jump directly to the interview. Welcome, Ian Epstein. I am so happy to host you here. This is the Startup Night tonight in Zurich, and we are super happy to be on top of this digital twin of Geneva. And we met here 25 years ago. Do you remember?
Amazing. Yeah, I do remember. And I remember the beautiful purple sunsets in Geneva then, and even more purple and beautiful here in this metaverse.
Yes, this is a metaverse that we've done for ITU, the AI for Good Summit. We're very, very happy and honored to host you and Republic.com here in this metaverse for the Startup Night in Zurich. Ian, let's really just start by talking a little bit about Republic.com, and maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview of what it is that you guys do, and then we'll dive into the different subjects that I want to bring to you tonight. Are you good?
Sounds great. Yeah, that's lovely. So Republic is a really interesting company with a global reach that I think can be described in three main buckets. In the first bucket, think big operating leverage. Millions of people have invested billions of dollars in thousands of companies and projects. In the second bucket, we're technologists, we're operators, we're advisors. We have the leading Web3 advisory and tokenization business in the world. We've advised hundreds of projects and companies, everything from Fortune 100 and 500 companies like Google and SK Corp out of Korea, and digitally native projects such as Avalanche, or Solana, or Aptos, or Sui, or any of those projects as well. I'd add to that an important footnote, which is our runtime node validator proof of stake business, where we run bare metal servers in almost 50 countries. And in the third bucket, we have billions of dollars in assets under management across our respective vehicles. So Republic Capital is space and aeronautics, rockets, rovers, stations, satellites, as well as deep tech, Web3, AI. We've got Republic Digital, we're very excited about, which is a liquid crypto and venture capital fund vehicle. We have Republic Ventures, which does a lot of early stage investing across the board. So three main buckets, but I think they all add up to one important story going forward, which is how does Republic put together all the pieces to have a coherent operating system for community funding and for founders, where great companies can raise money from their respective communities, from their industries, and it's regulated, and the technology experience is great, and we can deliver that across the world in many jurisdictions in more than 100 countries, where anybody in the world can invest in anything and not be precluded from doing so based on where they live or how much income they have or anything like that. And so I think going forward, the operating system as it applies to Web3 and AI and VR and AR, the operating system goes beyond just the blockchain, just goes beyond a unique piece of hardware, and really speaks to all of the different pieces of the puzzle that are required to bring an idea, to bring a product, to bring an investment, and to bring the community engagement that's necessary for the funding and the interaction with the customer. And so that's where we hope to be at Republic. These three main buckets are how we've grown up, but going forward, the coherent operating system for all these industries is what we aim to be.
Amazing. So you're like sitting on a pile of data that is completely linked between the high technology trends and the way that actually people perceive it and where they invest the money. So what happened to the metaverse hype? Ian, explain to us. What was that? What was that craziness? And then everything kind of went back to normal. What happened?
I think that you need a network effect. And I think that metaverse, the idea of metaverse, I don't think it's a story that's ended. Frankly, I don't even think it's a story that's begun, right? This is the first serious metaverse interview that I've had, and myself and my colleagues at Republic, we give lots of interviews. This is early stages. So I don't know that it's a chapter book who's hit its last chapter. I think it's a chapter book that hasn't started yet. And the thing about a metaverse experience and a ubiquitous metaverse world is you have to have a network effect. You have to have a critical mass of people that are engaged on these platforms, and for that you need a critical mass of people that have the hardware and have the way in which they can integrate it into their lives, into their work, into their amusement. We've seen some in gaming that are great. We've seen some for psychological treatment that are great. We've seen some in education that are great. We've seen some for military use that are great. Drones are a bigger deal. There's a lot of engagement with headsets and drones. I think that might be a gateway for some of this. But there's a hardware hurdle, and then there's a network effect. But the thing about network effects is once you have them, you don't lose them.
There are some metaverse that are extremely vivid, and I'm thinking about the Epic ecosystem. So that metaverse is vivid, and as you said, that the education also, we can see things flourishing, and then there's the VR itself that is dissociated from the metaverse itself, because the metaverse is a digital space that you could theoretically reach through your phone, your computer, and also VR headsets. But it leads me to, as I mentioned to you before this interview, I'm very excited about the idea of bringing large language models and AI in those metaverses where we would lose the you're alone in an empty space effect, and you would be able to actually interact with knowledge in an immersive way. Do you see this as a potential way through?
Absolutely. I think gaming will probably lead the way in a lot of ways for this, and how we engage with our ecosystems, how we engage with information around us. There's a lot of tools that are taking place now, and we'll see Web3 may have an important part to play in this. The proof of authenticity will be very important in a metaverse world, and provenance via blockchains, immutable blockchains will be an important part of that. And so I see a world where not only the compute power that's required for LLMs and AI, but the compute power that's required for really rich metaverse experiences probably sees a more decentralized rationing of that capacity. And so I see Web3 playing a role there, and then I see it, of course, as I mentioned, in proving provenance and proving identity. And I think those are two interesting ways in which metaverse and AI and Web3 will coalesce. They almost inevitably will coalesce. And so the question is, which one and where do the developers sort of lean in each of these three areas? Because you have sort of three somewhat distinct developer communities right now. And I think that when we sit here 10 years from now, the distinctions between these buckets, between AI, ML, Web3, and AR, VR, metaverse, I think that those lines are going to blur. And when they blur, that's when you'll get a lot of take up. You'll see people come, they'll be introduced into what will be this unified ecosystem by one of these three things, but the enhancement of all three of them will change the game for all three of them.
I really share this vision, and I feel that the convergence has not happened fully yet. And I do believe that each of those silos promises will be reached with the help of the other silos. So I think we're aligned here. That actually this metaverse is Web3 enabled, so you can actually log on with your MetaMask. It also has
So cool.
AI for automatic translation, and now we're working together closely with HTC Vive to allow us to start plugging in LLMs APIs in different NPCs. So stay tuned, because we might be, the first ones that actually deliver this to market.
That's amazing.
But that brings me to the Web3 and the tokenization applications. And when do you think that this Web3 will start to democratize beyond tracing and shipping and beyond finance?
I think we're at a stage now where the cryptography isn't really the point. We can take the cryptography for granted until maybe quantum machines or something like that. And so now the question is, beyond the double spend issue and beyond the fraud issues, and we know that the blockchains have veracity, what does that get us? It gets us a few things. It gets us a way in which for communities to fund themselves. The second piece that happens is where there is not a global architecture for markets and exchange, Web3 instantaneously does it by connecting everybody on the internet. And there's so much internet-based commerce, there's so much internet-based education, there's so much internet-based living, and look, we're here talking about the metaverse, that it would be strange to not have internet-based finance. That would just be a strange thing when so many other things have moved to the internet. The other thing that I would point out is this digital financial, this internet-based financial revolution allows anybody in the world to buy almost anything at any time from anywhere. Obviously, there's regulatory and OFAC restrictions in the United States from the US Treasury for geopolitical reasons, but broadly speaking, the tools now exist for anybody anywhere to invest in anything, and that's a powerful idea. And the other thing that I would point out as it relates to AI is we're going to get into a world where machines are paying machines for answer engines. And the current, mechanism for that to happen through the fiat rails is lackluster. And so we're going to see big, sophisticated AI applications and models that are paying and aggregating other very sophisticated AI applications and models. And I don't think that that's going to lend itself very well to what we have in the current fiat settlement system. Two other things that I think will happen here, to be less quote-unquote crypto-y and more Web3 native, is the movement of money and assets and rights across borders can be made almost at zero cost. That's very valuable. You're already seeing the growth of stablecoins. There's obviously product market fit there. And then the last thing I'd say is we're going to be able to make securities that have utility value. So right now we're doing a sale of Watford equity to global fan base. And depending on how much Watford equity you own, true ownership, not some NFT badge, but real equity ownership with real cash distributions and real rights. Depending on how much of it you own, you could be at the, at the players' training facility. You could sit in the owner's parking lot. You could sit in the owner's pub. You could get owner's discount on merchandise. So depending on how much ownership you have in something can convey true ownership rights. And that's very hard to do with traditional financial mechanisms. And it's something here at Republic that we're at the forefront of.
So when I hear you talk, Ian, I feel the energy of New York. I feel this vivid ecosystem. I'm here sitting in Europe. We have hundreds of years of innovation, and yet it feels like we're slow, and it feels like we're not as agile. We're talking here to a floor of entrepreneurs and of Swiss institutions. And what would be your advice to the entrepreneur and to the young companies in Europe, and especially here in Switzerland? How can we leverage this American dynamic? How can we import it?
I don't know that Europe and Switzerland are the same place. I think that there is differentiation there
True.
between the regulatory frameworks in Switzerland and Europe vis-a-vis Web3. So I'll come back to that in a moment. But I think broadly in Europe, there is an unfortunate thing that's happened now for the past generation. I think Macron has been very out front about talking about the risks to the European economy from a lack of innovation and brain drain. And I think he's been very upfront on the subject. I think France is actually starting to turn the corner a little bit, but it's nowhere near the kind of capitalist structure that breeds the innovation you have in America. And I think one of the things, as much as folks like me that want to see a vibrant startup scene in France get concerned by, is the arrest of Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram. They're trying to take seriously, use of their Telegram platform for terrorism and all sorts of other awful things. But at the end of the day, if you make the entrepreneur and the CEO liable for what goes on a network that has 1 billion people, you're not going to have networks that have 1 billion people. Like, that's just, you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes. So if you create that kind of individual liability, and it's why in the US we have the idea of the corporation, to differentiate the liability of the entity from the liability of the individuals. Obviously, individuals are still liable for criminality and fraud and things like that. But if you're going to build a network, if you're going to build a tool that 1 billion people want to use, you're going to have some bad actors. And so you're going to probably have to update some of the laws to accommodate these new technology realities. But I do think that there are challenges to Europe in the areas of innovation. And I think that the young people know that. And so you've seen a big wellspring of innovation and entrepreneurship in places like Portugal that have brought in a lot of entrepreneurs. I think you're seeing a wellspring in France as well. Scandinavia continues to quietly innovate. But Switzerland, when we think about Web3, has made things a bit easier. The smaller Swiss banks have tried to be more innovative. They will benefit from the use of this technology. There is a stronger Web3 openness here, I'd say, in Switzerland than there is in the rest of Europe. And it's why we and other companies that may not be Europe-based look to Switzerland as maybe a place to plant a flag on the continent and from which to maneuver and think about the opportunities geographically.
Do you remember 25 years ago when you and I were sitting in Geneva and it was the beginning of the first .com boom?
Yeah, sure.
It's amazing that in 25 years of life, we've experienced 3 revolutions, and that we are now on the verge of, I think, what will be the biggest game changer, which is AI. I'm a big believer in AI. So as Republic.com, what do you feel the world would look like in 5 to 10 years? Just imagination. Of course, nobody's going to hold you up to this, but just to get a little inspired.
Okay, so if the purpose of technology is to serve man and woman, and not the other way around, then there's going to be 2 very powerful things that happen here. Human beings are going to get healthier, and human beings are going to get smarter. So the human capacity to operate at a very different level of information. It started to feel that way with the internet, with Internet 1. And then we had Internet 2, which was kind of network effect. And Internet 3 is your participation in that network in a more robust way. I think AI is consistent with that 3rd iteration, and it will have a big web base to it. And it will make us significantly more intelligent than what we could imagine. And so that's one thing. The other thing is I'm very optimistic that it'll make people healthier. The way in which people eat, the way in which people take care of themselves, that's also a form of intelligence. And I think AI will give more customized medicine solutions, more customized health regimens to the individual. So I see the individual having smarter brains and healthier bodies, and that's probably the biggest differentiation, because from that will spring everything else. From that will spring all of the other innovation. From that will spring all of the other lifestyle and cultural changes. When you have smarter, healthier people, you get a different culture. I mean, it's a big deal if you look back anthropologically through history. So I think that's one piece. The second piece is I think you're going to see huge advancements now in material sciences. You've had generations now that are focused on computer sciences, and that's largely the conversation we're having today. But AI is going to enable us to be significantly smarter and economical in the way we advance material sciences, whether those material sciences are nuclear or even more broadly defined as including life sciences and molecular biology and things like that. The physical world around us, as we get smarter, will be more easily manipulable, and I think that becomes really interesting, whether those are materials or medicines. So I think we get physically healthier and smarter, and then the world around us, we start to innovate more and more with that intelligence.
So taking all of that vision into account, what would be your advice to young Swiss entrepreneurs, taking into consideration the paradigm that changes, the fact that they are in Switzerland? What would be Republics.com motto for young Swiss entrepreneurs?
The world today and the social media platforms allow folks to live and think and engage far more globally than ever. So, if you've got an idea that benefits from other people sharing their perspectives on it, I think you can put that idea out there and really try to stimulate high quality conversations. And there's a lot of high quality conversations to be had, and that can be good for getting exposure to a business. The second piece is it's a different paradigm now for sourcing talent globally, and I don't think that's lost on any of the entrepreneurs that are listening to this, but I think continuing to have a global team where you can get the skills and knowledge and intelligences from around the world, I think that's very beneficial. And then I think you really need to know what your product is, know what your market is, and be very thoughtful and very clear about crawling, walking, and then running. Everybody's got lots of big ambitions, but it's important to sort of crawl, walk, run into a strong business. And I think if you have strong ideas that are recognized globally, you can recruit talent globally and have them contribute to your product. And then you take a really sober-minded perspective on making sure that everything you build is good before you move on to the next thing or the next expansion. I think those are three things that are taken into account by investors, regardless of the kind of cohort of investor, and by strategic partners at large corporates.
Ian, thank you so much for being with us in this metaverse.
My pleasure.
We're going to join you on Teams for the question and answers from the audience. So I'll see you in 1 second in real life.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, welcome. I'm David Granite. Thank you very much for being here. As you can see, we hosted this interview in the Metaverse. We're now open for question. Ian is with us in live from New York. Do we have questions in the audience? Maybe the light I can see. Anyone wants a question for Republic.com? Ian Epstein? All right, Ian, I have questions. Oh, is there a question over there? All right. No problem. I will take it from there. Ian, can you see me? I can see you.
Sure, I see you. You look better than your avatar, but
I
the
look
avatar's
better.
getting better. So.
All right. Well, Ian, we mentioned a little bit about the EU and the American differences. I really want to focus a little bit on the opportunities that Swiss entrepreneurs have and how you see the way that they should leverage all of the big corporation and the ecosystem and this vivid ecosystem. Maybe we can dive into this a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that the best thing that Swiss entrepreneurs have going for them is a pretty conducive government. Whether that's conducive because you can negotiate your taxes bilaterally with the canton in which you reside, which is obviously very important, or whether or not there's a forward-leaning regulatory rubric when it comes to Web3, or frankly, because of the government public-private partnerships associated with things like CERN and some of the major research facilities. I'm aware of this, frankly, because I lived in Switzerland. And truthfully, nothing else I've done in my career, but having lived in Switzerland, gives me that knowledge about Switzerland, which is a huge problem and a huge opportunity for Swiss entrepreneurs. The message about public-private partnerships, canton-level support and engagement, and national regulatory frameworks is not something that the global business community is aware of. Certainly not something that early-stage, venture-backed companies are aware of. Certainly not something I think that's broadly understood in Web3. Outside of some small private banking, globally, this is not known. Swiss entrepreneurs that can leverage these three things, public-private partnerships, canton-level engagement and support, and national regulatory rubrics, who can harness these things, articulate these things, and make these things valuable to their global counterparts, are going to wind up bringing business to Switzerland and helping themselves, because the business they bring to Switzerland will be the business that can support their businesses. So this is something that, had I not lived in Switzerland, I'd be totally ignorant to all three of these things, which I'm sure to this group seem obvious. Let me tell you, it's not obvious. Nobody knows. No one knows. And if you don't tell them, guess what? They're going to continue not knowing.
Super interesting. So why are you not in Switzerland yet? You mentioned in our interview that there's maybe a place for Republic.com here in Switzerland. How can we help you come here quicker?
That's a great question. I think that, I'd say a twofold. It's hard to aggregate human capital in most places of the world. New York, where our headquarters is a place where I can hire 50 high caliber people in the course of a few weeks. There's almost nowhere else in America, maybe outside Chicago, maybe outside Austin, where I don't think that's true in Miami yet. And I don't think it's true anywhere in Europe except for Paris. And I would even include London, depending on the business you're in. So there is an issue of scale. I don't think it's a massive issue, but it is an issue. And it's an issue that, you know, America has solved decently well with big recruiting systems from universities, and you know, I could get into a whole reason for why New York is New York and the rest of it, but that's one challenge. The second challenge is we need a Swiss partner, broadly speaking. So it really is about which of the Republic businesses, and I appreciate the audience listening to our Metaverse chat. I spoke a lot about the respective businesses at Republic. If there is someone in this audience who sees one of these businesses at Republic and believes that it would fit well within the Swiss ecosystem, that's interesting. Or if they think that there's a product or service in Switzerland with whom we should partner as a global launchpad, I'm all ears. But for me, the one business that I may set up there in the near future is a crypto exchange, because it's already existed there. And I bought the code base out of bankruptcy. And anybody here who's got involved at all in the Swiss bankruptcy system to buy assets in Swiss bankruptcy, there's very few people in the world that have any experience doing this. Frankly, there's probably a business unto itself doing this, but we bought a great code base. We brought a great regulatory reputation and filings with that. That business is based in Zug, which is quite forward-leaning when it comes to Web3. So that's something that was already a business that was already running there. The regulators are familiar with it and with the tech stack. And so I feel like I'm not as much starting from scratch. But other things that aren't that weren't already Swiss businesses, frankly, I'm going to need somebody to reach out with a hand and tell me why a partnership with them makes them the right partner for us in Switzerland, either for the Swiss market or as a launching pad for a global customer acquisition.
Well, the community is here and they're hearing you. And if someone sees an opportunity, please let us know. We'll put you in contact with Republic.com. Ian, we have 1 minute left. So I just want to thank you so much. And I want to point out that Ian and we're friends for years. And really, it's been a pleasure to have you in the Metaverse. And thank you for taking the time today to join us. If there's one last question in the audience, maybe? No one? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate y'all.